Few people realize it, but Masha and the Bear, the animated series about a little blonde girl and her bear friend that has entertained millions of people around the world, is connected to one of the most tragic events in Russian history, an event marked by suffering and loss. In today's video, we're going to reveal a chilling connection that very few people know about between this children's animation and the real story that inspired its creation. Get ready, because this origin story is far darker than you might imagine. Starting with what everyone already knows, Masha and the Bear is an animated series created in Russia in 2009 that quickly won over children all around the world with its crazy adventures and the contagious energy of its young protagonist. The cartoon shows the unlikely friendship between a very curious little girl and a bear, leading to funny situations full of chaos and confusion. The animation Masha and the Bear was born in Russia, and despite its cute tone and humorous situations, the idea actually came from an old Russian folktale, and that tale is far from innocent. Behind the cheerful appearance, there's a narrative filled with tension, fear, and suffering known by generations across the country. The success of the animation is massive. Masha and the Bear has already been broadcast in more than 120 countries around the world and has been translated into several languages such as English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Arabic, Chinese, and Japanese. The series has captured the hearts of millions of fans, becoming a global phenomenon. But the success doesn't stop there. The show has already had 4 seasons with more than 70 episodes and has been an absolute hit both on television and on streaming platforms. Each episode is a true journey for kids, packed with laughs and chaos. One of the most unforgettable episodes of the series, Laundry Day, reached an impressive 384 million views on YouTube, making it the most watched episode of all time so far. And that view count keeps growing. This enormous success of Masha and the Bear, being an animation created in Russia, comes from how easily it captivated children all over the world with its wild adventures and the contagious energy of the little girl. The show portrays the unlikely friendship between a very curious girl and a big bear who constantly get themselves into funny and chaotic situations. And it has already been broadcast almost everywhere in the world. And it's precisely this contrast between the joyful animation and the tragic origin of the story that makes everything even more disturbing. In the cartoon, we follow Masha, a little girl around 3 or 4 years old, full of energy and completely unpredictable. She lives near a train station, is always getting into trouble, and even scares the forest animals with her antics. During one of her explorations, she ends up finding the cabin of a bear who used to work in a circus and now lives in isolation. After a lot of mess and chaos, a friendship full of confusion and funny moments is born. A curious detail is that even the clothes Masha wears are common and traditional among women in the Russian countryside, and they also work as a direct reference to the original story that inspired everything. And that's where the mood completely changes. Today, we're going to tell you about a little-known connection between the cartoon and a real-life tragedy that happened a long time ago. The story is moving and terrifying. Long before the animation existed, there was already a popular folktale in Russia about a little girl named Masha. In these old stories, Masha gets involved in unexpected situations after encountering a bear in the forest, learning lessons about courage, intelligence, and caution. These tales were passed down from generation to generation as a way to teach values and warn children. In the old Russian tale, Masha is a bit older and lived with her grandparents, who loved her dearly, in an isolated village surrounded by a dense and dangerous forest. Whenever she went out to gather mushrooms and berries, her grandfather warned her about a cruel bear that lived in that region. And it wasn't an exaggeration. Russia has always had one of the largest bear populations in the world, especially in more remote areas. One day, being very stubborn and ignoring her grandparents' warnings, the girl once again went into the forest, but she ended up getting distracted and lost while picking wild berries. Alone, surrounded by giant trees and with very little sunlight breaking through the branches, she wandered aimlessly and grew desperate, thinking about how worried her grandparents must be because she hadn't returned home. Along the way, she came across a cabin hidden among the trees. Masha knocked on the door and called out several times, and driven by curiosity and exhaustion, she entered the empty place and decided to rest a bit in an armchair near the window. But the silence began to feel frightening, and when she tried to leave, she came face to face with a huge, fierce, and hungry bear right in front of her. He was the resident of that small cabin lost in the forest. Instead of attacking Masha immediately, the animal noticed the basket of fruit she was carrying. Desperate, Masha said she could make delicious fruit pies for him every day if he didn't devour her. The bear accepted the offer, but imposed a cruel condition. She would become his prisoner, forced to prepare food for him every day under threat of death. He warned Masha that she could never leave without him, or he would eat her. The bear left every day, and Masha stayed in the cabin cooking for when he returned. Even though she was alone most of the day, the girl didn't know which path to take to get back home. and if she tried, she would certainly get lost and die of hunger or freeze to death. But she came up with an idea. Whenever the bear went into the forest, she would climb to the top of a tree to observe the path he took. From there, she wished him a good day of hunting and work, which he heard and waved back to. But time passed, and weeks turned into months. In a moment of hope, Masha came up with a plan to free herself from that prison. She asked to take some pies to her grandparents, but the bear didn't allow her to leave. After much insistence, the bear agreed, but decided he would make the delivery himself. Masha baked several pies and put her plan into action. She placed them in a very large basket and quickly, while the bear was distracted, hid inside it. This would be her chance to escape that terrifying situation. The bear followed the path to the village without even imagining that Masha was inside the basket. She reminded him that he shouldn't open the basket or eat any of the pies along the way, and he agreed. The bear walked along a very difficult path and stopped for a moment to rest. He then decided to open the basket and eat one of the pies. At that moment, Masha shouted from inside the basket, "I'm watching you. Don't stop to rest and don't eat the pies." He was startled, but then remembered that the girl often stayed on top of the tree watching him from afar and sometimes spoke to him. The bear then continued on his way without eating the pies and soon arrived at the village where Masha used to live. But as he got closer, he ended up being surrounded by fierce dogs who, upon sensing the bear's smell, chased after him. Frightened and wanting to run faster, the wicked bear chose to abandon the basket right there. From it came out little Masha, who immediately ran to the cabin where she lived, knocked on the door, and threw herself into her grandparents' arms. Masha told them everything she had endured during those months held captive by the bear, and the tale comes to an end. The story, despite being heavier and containing threats of death and enslavement, does not have a tragic ending. However, the Russian folktale certainly doesn't resemble the children's animation watched by so many kids around the world, does it? But the story isn't over yet, because the real story that inspired this children's tale is far more cruel and terrifying. More than 200 years ago, in a small Russian village, there lived a family of farmers made up of a father, a mother, and their only daughter. As you might guess, the girl's name was Masha. It was the year 1820, and sweet little Masha was fascinated by stories about circuses and, especially, bears that rode bicycles and performed tricks. She dreamed of seeing them up close. After all, she lived in a rural area where circuses didn't exist. However, everything changed when a traveling circus arrived in her town. She insisted so much on going that her family decided to take her. But when they arrived, they discovered that the animal trainer was sick and the bears would not be performing. Disappointed and sad, Masha decided to look for the bears on her own while her parents were distracted. The small and innocent girl found them in a locked cage, but the key was right there beside it, unfortunately within reach of Masha's small hands. Believing they were harmless and driven by her desire to play with the bears, she kept trying until she managed to open the door. As soon as they noticed the cage door open, one of the bears came out, and the first thing he saw was little Masha, staring at him with sparkling eyes and a big smile on her face. But what happened next would become the greatest tragedy in that village's history. Suddenly, everyone heard extremely loud screams from a child. The circus workers rushed to the cage area and came upon a scene that traumatized each and every one of them for the rest of their lives. Masha was already on the ground, lifeless, her body covered in blood and missing some body parts. The taste of flesh had completely driven the bears out of control, and there was no other solution but to shoot them and put them down. The story quickly spread throughout the country, and the real case shocked the nation and was reported in several newspapers of the time. From then on, parents all across Russia who learned about the story began using it as a warning for their children about the dangers of forests and wild animals, which still exist there to this day. Over time, the real tragedy was softened, turning into a folk tale, then into children's books, until, centuries later, it ended up inspiring the animation we know today. You've probably never noticed, but there are details in the cartoon that prove the animation was inspired by the folktale, and even by the tragic real story of Masha from 200 years ago. We can see evidence that the bear has a past directly linked to the circus. This becomes very clear when we see several objects scattered throughout his house, such as old pictures, medals, musical instruments, and even photos of performances and training sessions. None of this is there by accident. It tells us that this bear was once part of shows, lived under human control, and spent years being trained to entertain people. All of this supports the theory that the animation was inspired by the story of little Masha, who would have lived around the year 1820. However, there is a striking difference between the animated version and the possible real story that inspired it. In the cartoon, the bear is portrayed as a calm, protective, and even caring character who, despite getting annoyed by MASHA's constant mischief, ends up developing a sincere friendship with her. Together, they experience fun adventures filled with humor and interesting situations, always with a light and child-friendly tone. In the real story, however, the outcome is completely different and far more cruel. Like many children, MASHA didn't have the ability to understand the real danger behind her curiosity, believing she was simply making new friends, when in reality, she was face to face with a deadly threat. This difference clearly shows how, over time, a story marked by pain and tragedy was gradually transformed until it became something suitable for a children's audience. In the cartoon, MASHA achieved what the real little girl never did, a happy ending. She was able to fulfill her dream of getting close to a bear, not as a victim, but as a friend. In real life, unfortunately, little MASHA's curiosity cost her everything, including her own life, leaving behind a sad story that crossed generations and ultimately served as a warning about the dangers of unchecked innocence.
We've reached the end of the video, but we're leaving 2 awesome videos for you to check out even more details and hidden Easter eggs from your favorite movies and shows.